Hello, my friends, my lovely, lovely neighbors. Welcome back. Welcome to Grief and Gathering, a podcast where we use our understanding of Magic the Gathering to break down intricate mental health concepts and increase our accessibility of understanding. I am your host, Lady Foxglove, and oh my goodness, neighbor, it has been far too long. Far longer than I would like. And for those of you who need the refresher, or maybe this is your first episode because you're seeing this pop up for maybe the first time because it hasn't been moving a lot in the past 3 to 4 months. My name is Ivy, and I am a doctor of psychology who specializes in all things death and sex and trauma and grief and all of the really hard things that people just don't like to talk about. And I use Magic the Gathering to help us feel like we can break down some of the taboo around these topics and just start to make them feel easier, feel more intuitive to discuss. And so I have been trying so very hard to get back to you all. I think the last episode I released was December 10th, December 9th, something around there. So it will have been almost 4 months here in a few weeks. And that's been really hard for me. And you hit a point where you wonder, how do I even come back? And so I'm releasing this episode kind of acknowledging that when you take a extended hiatus, especially an unintentional one, you've got some work to do when you come back. And I understand that. You know, a big thought of unfinished business, the regrets and feelings that come from that inability to say goodbye. For me, abruptly stopping what had up until this point been a very consistent recording project for myself with very routine episode debuts, it's been really hard because I care so much about consistency, so much about instilling a sense of safety, and uncertainty often doesn't feel safe. But a lot has been happening, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about all of that. I feel like my body's kind of playing against a, Staxy or, mono blue control, some shit like that. Because I'm living in a body that just keeps interrupting me. And that is so, so hard. And so a big focus of our episode today is chronic illness and handling the grief that comes from all of the limitations that chronic illness imposes on us. So for those of you who don't know, I do suffer from a variety of chronic illnesses, some of them diagnosed, some of them undiagnosed, but the largest kind of piece that I struggle with is something called myalgic encephalomyelitis, otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome. And instantly, you might have heard this, being called ME/CFS or something like that. I always feel pressure to refer to it as myalgic encephalomyelitis because people hear chronic fatigue syndrome and they just think, oh, you're tired all the time. Well, show me a parent who isn't tired all of the time. Which, yes, so true. Parenting is hard and exhausting, and it certainly doesn't help. But chronic fatigue syndrome isn't just this feeling of being tired or exhausted all the time. It looks like some days I can't get out of bed. Some days walking from the bed to the bathroom feels like I ran a 5K, which is really hard for me because I used to be a competitive runner. I was never amazing, but I was busting out 18, 19-minute 5Ks. And now I can't play with my son for more than 10 minutes without feeling like I'm going to pass out. And the other thing with chronic illness is that chronic illness is an ongoing disruption. It's not a temporary setback, right? If you get COVID or the flu or a stomach bug, you may be, down and out for a few days, a few weeks, maybe a month or two, but eventually you bounce back. Chronic illness, there isn't that bounce back always. We have points where we feel better and you take advantage of those moments, but then you have points where that's just not possible. And so part of this episode is to just sit down and chat with you all about what the future of Grief and Gathering looks like. It's not going anywhere, I'll say that now. But just be transparent about what these things are going to look like in the future, where I've been, what's been going on, but also taking some time to chat about chronic illness because I do think that it's something that isn't often understood. And there's a special type of disenfranchised grief that comes from living in a body that feels like it's working against you. And so when I think, if we want to take it into magic terms, right? If we see our body as the deck that we're playing with, right? You can do everything to optimize that deck. You can get the ratios down perfectly to where you have, if you're in Commander, 38 lands and 12 pieces of ramp and 10 pieces of card advantage and 5 or 6 pieces of removal and 1 or 2 or 3 board wipes and a few pieces of recursion and protection and then maybe a surprise win condition or 2. That's usually how I build my decks. But we can feel like we have done everything in our power to optimize, and then we still get bad draws, like really bad draws, like really unplayable bad draws. And so there's nothing you can do. Sometimes your opening 7 is just not playable. And it doesn't mean that you are failing as a deck builder. It doesn't mean that you're really bad at this game. Sometimes you just don't draw a keepable 7 or 6 or 5. And that's kind of what's happening when we are handling chronic illness, because it's a variance. It's a variance that our deck happens to have in it. It's not a failure. It's not due to sometimes anything other than this is just how our decks, our bodies play sometimes. And there's a special kind, though, of grief that comes with losing trust in your bodies. And it's a feeling of loss to go from being able-bodied and capable and strong to someone who isn't any of those things. Going from someone who was a acrobat and circus performer to someone who lays in bed most nights crying because my legs hurt so bad. It's a really hard feeling to cope with, and it's something that I have spent so often trying to find a reason for. If only I had stayed in shape, if only I had done this better, if only I had done that better. But the truth that I'm being forced to learn, and anyone else with chronic illness is being forced to learn, is sometimes it's a bad draw. You could do everything right. You could be the healthiest, most active, most mentally secure person and still be knocked on your butt by chronic illness. Um, I have long COVID, so COVID did such damage on my lungs that I will never be able to get back to, you know, in shape, athletic, whatever you want to call it, lung capacity. And that's a really hard thing to come to terms with. And it's obviously not as severe, when we're playing Magic, but just in the similar vein, it's like when you spend all of this time optimizing a deck and you put so much love and heart and soul into it, and you're really excited to play it, and it just doesn't do anything. And it's frustrating. But then there's this subculture that's telling us we can't be frustrated. We're not allowed to be frustrated. We have to stay positive, because if you don't stay positive, you're never going to get better. And there are times when I can't be positive. There are times when you have a really bad game and this deck that should have done so much better just really shit out on you. And it's really hard to be positive in that moment. I think a lot about chronic fatigue syndrome in particular, about how, this can look in our games of Magic. And I realize, how many times maybe are you all forced to take mulligans, right? You get your opening 7 and you see a couple cards that have you really excited, and oh my god, like your whole game plan is in this hand, but you don't have any lands in the hand. And so you have these cards that are amazing, that they have your fully curated, well thought out game plan, and then you have absolutely zero energy to make those plans happen. And you're left with a choice. Do you mulligan and get rid of that great plan so that maybe you can play something less optimal, but you can actually play? Or do you hold on, conserve that hand, and hope you draw energy in the future? And that's a lot of what chronic fatigue is like, at least for me. I cannot speak to everyone's experience, but for myself and my loved ones and friends who also experience chronic illness, this is very similar to our experiences of, okay, I have these plans, I have these intents. Do I sit on them knowing that if I do all of the 20 other things I have to do, I may not then have the energy to execute these well-optimized, well-laid intentions? Or do I make the decision to discard those, acknowledging that instead I have to get a new hand that will allow me to do the dishes and shower and take care of my child? And it kind of turns into a one or the other situation. And that sucks. And in this, you have people telling you so many things. Just take essential oils, cut out seed oils, only use animal fat. Now, don't use animal fat, only use avocado oil. Oh, you shouldn't be using any oil. You should only be eating fish. No fish. People tell you 20 different things, And every single thing is implying that it's your fault that you're feeling this way. Really, what everyone with chronic illness and those who have people in their lives with chronic illness, because I guarantee every single one of you knows someone who's struggling right now with chronic illness. It's accepting this idea that resting is not a misplay. We've all been there in a commander game, right? You sometimes have to play a little bit of draw go. You're conserving, you're waiting. Sometimes you just have to pass the turn without doing anything. And that doesn't always feel good. It rarely feels good to feel like we don't have options. But there is this pressure to play through it. But forcing productivity during illness so often backfires on us. And forcing ourselves to play out our entire hand because, it's maybe not optimal right now, but we want to feel like we're doing something. That's a very real struggle that people actually experience. And the outcome is usually the same. You end up fucked. You end up unable to do anything. And so passing the turn often just looks like it's strategic. It's the whole spoons theory. You're not quitting. You're saying, I need to conserve energy right now. I am resting so that I can manage my resources. But at the end of the day, every single person with chronic illness is forced to make a choice. And that choice is whether you want to stop playing or play with the deck that you have. And sometimes you go back and forth, and sometimes you choose to continue playing, and sometimes you choose to stop. And maybe you'll decide both things on the same day. But it gets to a point where we need to accept our bodies and accept where we are. And that doesn't mean, I don't mean accept in the way of thinking it's great. I don't mean accept in the way of pretending nothing is wrong, but this radical acceptance of saying, this is what I can do right now. And my loves, I am still struggling with this concept. It is a hard concept. Sometimes it's so hard that you stop doing things you really enjoy for 4 months because the thought of sitting in front of a computer and speaking and recording uninterrupted is daunting. And it gets to a point where all we can do is what we can do. And you learn to recognize how to meet your body where it's at instead of wishing it was something else. We have to sometimes adjust our expectations instead of abandoning the game completely. But that's a really, really hard thing to do, for myself included. And I would bet I'm not alone in those difficulties. I have missed you all so very much. And in these last 4 months, I have been grieving. I continue to miss my sister so much that it hurts. I continue to feel angry at the world, angry at this country, angry at myself, angry at other community members, angry at my abusers. I am angry. I am sad. I am despondent. I am so many things right now. But I recognized that speaking to you all also makes me feel hopeful. That every time a single person reaches out to me and says, "This episode really struck home with me," my first reaction is, "I'm so sorry," because we talk about hard shit. And so if an episode really hits home, that tells me that you're going through it, which fucking sucks. But my second thought is always how thankful I am to have a platform where I can sit here and share my story, and we can have dialogue and discuss topics in a way that feels accessible. Every time a friend messages me because they're dealing with a really complicated scenario following someone they love dying or anything, it makes me feel like I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And so for me, accepting what this body is capable of right now is acknowledging that I need to be more intentional about where I spend my resources. And it's about reprioritizing, because this is something that I care about, and being with you all is something I care about so much. This magic community has gotten me through some of the hardest points of my life. And I'm not the only one. I have yet to have a meet and greet where someone doesn't come up to me and say, "Tell me how Magic the Gathering saved their life." And, the card game itself has been an amazing outlet for me and continues to be. It's also, my largest superfluous expense. But the community is something that I cherish. And so this podcast is my way of, one, selfishly continuing to feel fulfilled, and also sometimes the best I can do in an attempt to give back. So where do we go from here? We're going to get back to regular releases. I don't know yet if those will be every week or every other week, but we are going to get back to regular releases. We are going to bring more guests in. I'm sitting on a couple recordings right now that I just haven't been able to edit yet, but we are going to release more episodes with guests. I love talking with people, and so some of those conversations I've had already have been some of my favorite moments in the last few years professionally. So I'm really excited for those to start coming out. And then otherwise, we rebuild and we pick up where we left off. Will it look the same? No. Will it look completely different? I don't think so. But sometimes, especially after you've stepped away for a long time, the biggest thing you can do is to just hit record or hit post or hit publish or whatever else. Fiddling with episode lengths a little bit. So end of the day, I I don't keep my episodes any certain length. They're done when they're done. I don't believe in extending episodes unnecessarily, but I also don't want to be pushing out a bunch of, 5-minute episodes. That doesn't feel worthwhile. So I think I keep them usually like kind of TED Talk length, right? Where sometimes TED Talks are like 10, 15 minutes long, sometimes they're fucking hour. It just really depends. Obviously, episodes where I have someone with me will tend to be longer. um, Next week or next release, we'll be releasing an episode about grief, just reiterating how it's not linear, how grief is so recursive and cyclical, and how it's always evolving and mutating. But, neighbor, it has just meant the world to me to see all of your continued supports, all of your well wishes, all of your love. It just means the world to me. Um, I do want to, at the end, as we approach and as we get ready to say our goodbyes, I have things to plug now, which is crazy. Um, but I do want to thank Manapool for letting me, partner with you all. Manapool has become my absolute favorite website to buy cards. And so if you are in the market for cards, which you always are because you're here and you're listening and you make questionable choices just like I do, go over to manapool.com, use code FOXGLOVE at checkout. It'll get you a nice little discount. You'll get some rewards to use towards future purchases, a nice little $5 off, all kinds of good stuff. So go to Manapool, use code FOXGLOVE. It has an amazing intuitive cart optimization system. I just love them to pieces. Additionally, go check out Commander's Herald. I have recently started writing over there. They made the silly mistake to give me my own personal column to kind of just do what I want with. So we've been having fun talking about serious topics, but with a kind of fun spin on them. So go check out Commander's Herald. Look for articles under the name Ivy Foxglove. All of those good things. But otherwise, my lovely neighbor, my challenge for you this next couple of weeks is to check in with yourself and ask yourself that if your body were a deck right now, what would you stop demanding of it? What unfair expectations are you putting on yourself right now? Until next time, I'm Lady Foxglove. This has been the Grief and Gathering podcast. And remember, my lovely neighbor, that it is you that I like, and we'll see you again real soon.